This period saw the rise of one of history's most iconic generals, Hannibal Barca, the son of Hamilcar. Instructed by his dad, Hannibal was raised with an intense hatred for Rome and was groomed to be a military leader. After his father's death, Hannibal led successful campaigns in Spain, not only increasing Carthaginian resources, but also posing a growing threat to Rome. His daring tactics and leadership skills would soon be put to the ultimate test. In 218 BC, rising tensions between Rome and Carthage ignited once again, this time leading to the Second Punic War, a conflict that would feature one of the most audacious military campaigns in history. The immediate trigger of the Second Punic War was the Siege of Saguntum, a city in Spain allied with Rome, but in the sphere of Carthaginian influence. Its capture by Hannibal Barca signaled the start of open hostilities. The Second Punic War had begun. After the fall of Saguntum, Hannibal decided to bring the war to Rome. He took a daring path, marching his army from Spain through France and crossing the dangerous Italian Alps. His vast army, which included war elephants, suffered heavy losses in the snow and high altitude of the mountains, but emerged as a united fighting force. The sudden arrival of Hannibal's army in northern Italy took Rome by surprise, and they hastily sent their armies north to engage him. At the Battle of Lake Trasimene in 217 BC, Hannibal set an ambush. The Romans walked straight into his trap, and the Carthaginians slaughtered the entire Roman army. This led to the infamous Battle of Cannae in 216 BC. Even though the Roman forces were larger, they underestimated the genius of Hannibal. The Carthaginian commander arrayed his smaller army in a crescent formation, which meant that he was able to surround the Romans. Pressed from all sides, it was another mass slaughter. This victory was a masterpiece of tactics and one of the most significant in military history. Yet even in victory, Hannibal's strategic limitations emerged. He couldn't seize the city of Rome itself and had to remain in Italy, waiting for the Romans to surrender. One young Roman general, Scipio Africanus, who was lucky to have survived Cannae, studied Hannibal's tactics. He decided to turn the tide of the war by taking the fight to Carthage's home territories in Africa. In 202 BC, the decisive Battle of Zama marked the end of the Second Punic War. Hannibal, for the first time, was defeated on the battlefield by Scipio, forcing Carthage to sue for peace. The terms of peace were harsher this time. Carthage lost all its overseas territories, had its navy limited, and was prohibited from waging war without Rome's permission. The conclusion of the Second Punic War left Rome in a position of strength in the Mediterranean, while Carthage, once a formidable power, was reduced to a shadow of its former self. During this period, Rome further solidified its control over the Mediterranean, annexing territories and establishing its influence over kingdoms in the east. Rome, sensing no immediate threat from Carthage, turned its attention towards other potential rivals. Carthage, on the other hand, struggled to recover from the losses of the Second Punic War. Despite these challenges, Carthage managed to pay off its war indemnity and sought to restore some of its former prosperity. However, Carthage's recovery alarmed Rome, fearing a resurgence of their old rival. In 150 BC, Carthage clashed with Numidia, a Roman ally in northern Africa, over territorial disputes. Rome saw this as a breach of the peace treaty. The scene was set for a final confrontation. Rome was poised to deliver a finishing blow to its age-old adversary. In 149 BC, Rome declared war. Unlike the previous Punic Wars, the third was primarily a protracted siege of Carthage itself. The final assault came in 146 BC, led by the Roman general Scipio Aemilianus, who was the adopted grandson of Scipio Africanus. The Romans broke through the city walls, and the soldiers were given open permission to slaughter anyone they found and destroy everything they saw. The city was set alight and burned for days. Carthage was in ruins. Its remaining walls were torn down, and the last survivors were sold into slavery. Carthage's last territories were taken by Rome and turned into the province of Africa. With Carthage obliterated, Rome stood unchallenged as the dominant power in the Western Mediterranean. The Punic Wars also had a profound cultural impact. Rome, once a recipient of cultural influences from Carthage and the Greek world, started influencing these cultures with its own. Ultimately, the Punic Wars marked the rise of Rome as a genuine superpower in the ancient world. Within a century and a half, it would become known as the Roman Empire.